the Aquarius Age is all about collaboration. It's all about understanding that we are a variety of individuals that are completely different and bring a different facet of the expression of God or the universe, whatever that is. And each one of us can contribute to the greater good of all. And that is the beautiful premise of the Aquarian Age. Let's collaborate instead of separate. But and let's learn from the bees and the ants model that would put us all together and we're all going to work for the greater good of all. But the thing is, we're coming out of the Piscean Age, which was eventually led us to the highest value of greed and money. And that led to some people or some corporations or some countries becoming very controlling.
Hi, Conscious Parents, it's Carrie here, and I am here with a little info about raising our mindful kids. I've got some tips and tricks about breaking free of the box and becoming who you are and teaching your kids how to do that along the way. Join us. Hi, Conscious Moms and Dads. Do you have moments where you miss that flow state that you used to find before becoming a parent? Was there something that you used to work in that your heart was really passionate about and you felt like you were making a difference in the world? You can join us with a free guided meditation available in the show notes to help you rediscover your passion in life. Hi there and welcome back. I have a real treat for you today. I am so excited. I've been waiting for a few weeks to talk to this guest today. We have Galit Raymond here, who has been working with Astrology Dome on Instagram and YouTube. And that's where I found her. I've been following her on Instagram. And I've been having all these moments where I feel this energy building up and I'm like, what is going on? And then I tune in to Astrology Dome. I'm like, that's it. She has seen me. She has said exactly what I was feeling in my heart. So I'm so excited to have Galit here today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you for inviting me. This is very exciting. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And we have been having a little chat, you and I, before we started today. We were talking about a lot of these kids who are being born nowadays and these gifts that they're coming into the world with. We're seeing we have different terms. Sometimes they're termed under neurodiverse. Sometimes we're seeing them termed under highly sensitive children. And I feel like I've been seeing some patterns, and I loved checking in with you to see what are these feelings and these pieces that you're seeing with some of these kids who are born as neurodiverse right now?
Very good question, because I do see a shift on the planet. In general, we are living in times of change, and we did speak a little bit about that, you and me. We all have signed up for this, even though it's bumpy, it's rough, it's raw, it's not comfortable. On the other hand, it's very exciting. And along those changes, which us as a humanity are going through, I think we are redefining what it means to be human and what is a human. And now with the AI and the robots that are showing up as players on the scene, we are really asking that question loud and clear. What is the human? And up until now, up until 20 years ago, actually, we have defined humans as something very structural. Humans were supposed to be born, go through school, find someone to marry, work 40 years in a certain, doing something specific, and then retire. But is it really so? With the internet have enabled us to open up our vision into defining what work is, for example. And definitely after COVID, we really redefined what work is and how can we engage in a work situation. And what is work? Work is me putting out energy and receiving currency in return, right? That's what work is. So we defined that, but we also have been experiencing redefining sexuality, for example, in the past. It's not that people didn't prefer different sexualities before, but we experience it on a grander scale, on a mass trajectory, that we can see people choosing different modes of sexuality, different mode of naming themselves. The pronoun of she, he, they, them is a different definition of how one sees themselves as human, as part of a collective, yet as an individual. What is an individual? We see the value of family changing, because now we have families that are comprised of 3 individuals or 4 or maybe 1, and not necessarily of different sexes, but maybe of the same sex. And it works. And so many different strategies work. So we're asking questions and we are redefining what is a human experience. What does it mean? And all this is to do with a lot of astrological transits that we're experiencing because we're moving into the age of Aquarius, which is reshuffling the cards, reshuffling our definitions or our belief system as to who we are, what are we doing here on the planet, and where are we going? What expansion is out there and what possibilities are out there, and how can we grow from this? And so I see neurodivergent people as part of the collective that comes to define itself in a very unique way, because neurodivergent people are questioning what is normal, right? For example, that is a question. Yeah. What is normal? And in the beginning, when these kids just came about, and I know a lot of them, the school system said, oh, you're not normal. You should have a special ed or a different set of circumstances because you cannot learn like normal people. But then the definition of normal started changing itself, because these kids, some of them, are more brilliant than normal people, like a lot more brilliant. And they come with so many gifts. So people didn't know how to define those qualities and gifts. And so they came up with different names and different definitions that I'm sure will evolve within time as well. And then we have this player, Elon Musk, that showed up from nowhere and stood up on Saturday Night Live one night and said, I'm an Asperger and I'm not going to understand your facial expressions. And he made fun of it, but he was very honest and raw about his not being normal, but his brilliancy and his vulnerability came out and showed people, and look where he is today, showed people what not normal can achieve in one person's lifetime and how this is actually advancing humanity at all, the whole sum of humanity. So what is normal is no more the question, but how, I think that the question is, how do we embrace those that are a deviation from what normal was supposed to be? And those are not just neurodivergent people. Those are different sexuality or different people that prefer to live in community rather than just in the normal coupling situation. There are all kind of, or those people that are starting to inject themselves with DNA changes, and they create all kind of mutations in their body. This is also the not normal part of society. People are doing all kind of things. So I was thinking about, how do we embrace change?
Yes. And I think what you're talking about with this embracing change, humanity seems, as you said, this era that's coming in, it seems like we're in this shift. And so many of us are realizing that we are highly sensitive, we are gifted, we are different with our gender, we are, or where we define ourselves or identify. And so it feels like there's this piece of humanity that is open and ready for it. We're ready to receive. We're ready. We're looking at the strengths of the individual. We are not focusing on making everybody blend in and everybody look like the same person. When you look into a classroom nowadays, a lot of the speech therapists and teachers are trying to help children be themselves and focus on the strengths of children. So we don't look in the classroom and they all look the same. We can look in the classroom and we can see each child for who they are, which I think is beautiful, that we're identifying and we're living in this era of strengths. And I love that Elon Musk broke down the door for us in that way, right?
Amazing.
Broke down the door. We're showing our superhuman powers. It can be a little bit challenging coming from, I'm a mom of 2 kids who are gifted, spirited, highly sensitive, and their brains work so fast that my husband and I are trying to keep up. And my husband and I were both gifted children as well. We were the first era in the 80s. I think when you started astrology, right? In that 80s, we were this first generation, but we can't keep up. We're exhausted. Some of these parents were trying our hardest because these kids, their brains are so powerful and their spirits are so powerful. And it's hard to keep up sometimes. I'm teaching my kids the tools of, yes, you're born with this amazing sensitivity and these superhuman powers, we call them, because I want to empower them with who they are. Yet sometimes their brain can feel overstressed, right? Because the brain is working overtime and they can feel like, oh, this is really heavy, or being at school all day can feel really heavy at times, being around all these children. So teaching them these pieces of protection and what an empath is and how our brains work, and teaching them all of these pieces now. What do you feel like you would say, as well as like with the regulation, the emotional regulation, and some of these pieces can be more challenging for my husband and I when we were children, and now we're seeing that with our children?
First of all, the brain capacity and the ability, you were saying their brain is so fast. And I think what's happening is we as humans, on an overview, we are developing and our brain capacity is getting larger. We're competing with the machine in a way. And we're discovering that our brains are faster and better than we ever thought is possible. And part of it is technologies enabled us to think faster and consume more information. On the one hand, it's developing. On the other hand, it's exhausting because we're on overload. And especially if someone is highly sensitive, their boundaries are not that set and they're very porous. And so that overstimulation affects their emotions. And then when the emotions are on overload, there could be a volcano erupting just because the emotions are not regulated. So I think as human species, we are adjusting to that new modality, but that's going to take time. On an individual level, how do we deal with it when it's in our home, it's our kids? So astrology is an amazing art. And that's why I so love astrology, because if you take a chart, you can see when a person is born, everybody is born at a certain time, in a certain date, in a certain place. And that place will define how the planets look like at the moment of birth. And that is a snapshot of the moment of someone's birth. So that is the birth chart in a nutshell. And it's divided into houses and planets and all that good stuff. And in that snapshot, we can see what are the qualities and the gifts that an individual brings, but also what are the challenges that one brings, because this is the human experience. We have them both. We have the gifts and the challenges. But if the more aware we are to our gifts, the more we can empower them and explore them. The more we are aware to our challenges, the more we can find modalities and strategies to help us cope or maybe even excel due to those challenges. Challenges are always lessons. And those lessons, when we come to the human experience, we come to school in a way, in a human body, in a physical existence. And we're a spiritual being experiencing a physical life. And so that comes with some pleasures, the pleasure of eating or touching or hugging or seeing or hearing those and smelling, those are pleasures. But it comes with some challenges of all those emotions and perceptions, because when we have a perception about something and those perceptions are being dictated or being programmed into us when we're little kids, before we have the understanding of separation, I am an individual and this is society, or those are my parents, or this is my classmates, we think that we are them and they are us. So there is this enmeshment within the individual when they're young, and they are being programmed. We are being programmed with society rules and regulations and expectations. And we believe that to be true. It takes us a lifetime journey to find out that, hey, maybe some of it is true, but not all of it is necessarily true. And the astrology chart can give us that higher perspective or higher understanding that some of our truth needs to be re-examined and redefined in order for us to find out who we really are. Because let's face it, this is what we're doing here. This is the journey, finding out who you are, what you're good at, what you're not good at, and how can you excel with that? How can you explore more of who you are? This is the journey that each and every one of us is going through. And so highly sensitive kids or people are going through the same journey. They just have this extra sensitivity. So how can we help people that are extra sensitive, and more people that are being born in the past 20 years and definitely now in those times of change own this high sensitive capacity that on a good day, this is a great gift. On a rainy day, this is a burden. It is a burden. So how do we navigate? And one more thing, we live in a duality world, so there is no perfect or balanced or really harmony. We're constantly juggling two sides, right? Black and white, good and bad, positive yin and yang, and all that. So we always live on a range of equality, a range of emotion, a range of abilities, a range between not being able, powerless, and being very capable and able, powerful, right? This is where we are usually spending our time. We all want to tend to move to the powerful, but hey, we're not there all the time. And some of our parts are in powerless, and some of our parts are in powerful. And when we feel the powerless situation, we're bummed out. We don't like it usually because our society had defined that powerless is not good, but powerful is the only good measurement that we can have. So it's an evolutionary movement. But back to the question, how can we help people? First of all, accept themselves. I think it all starts with self-acceptance, isn't it? And you can tell me probably more than what I can tell you about what does it mean? What is the journey to self-acceptance? And how can one accept that, yeah, in some places they're powerless, and those are the areas that need more work. And in some places they are powerful, and those are the areas where they can show up in society and say, hey, this is who I am, and get acknowledgement and recognition for that. And that gives them the self-acceptance or empowerment points that they need so much for when they're powerless. Does that make sense?
Hi there, Changemaker moms and dads. It's Carrie here. I hope you're enjoying today's episode. If there's any pieces of this episode that resonate with you, we would love for you to share it with a friend. A little helping hand goes a long way. We appreciate you tuning in, and here's more. It's beautiful. I love it so much. And I would reflect as a parent, I didn't realize that I had to work through those pieces myself. And I felt so powerless at many times. But as my children are getting older, I'm finding how powerful I feel as a mom. I've found my voice. I've found so many pieces of myself that I had to work through and discover and grow from. So as I'm having children, I'm realizing, wow, I love connecting with others and sharing this experience with other parents, how powerful we can feel, because raising these kids, you can often feel so powerless, but really we have those powerless moments are moments where we're heading for growth, moments where we're heading to learn and to heal and to change. So it's so many powerful opportunities for us, or I guess I'm using the powerful again, but opportunities for us to define ourselves and find that powerful piece. It's really helpful for my kids because when they're having a moment where they're just overwhelmed and their system is shut down and they're having a sensitive moment, after that moment, sometimes they do things in that moment they don't want to do. And so I've started to tell my kids, that's not you. You're not defined by that. That's a moment. You're having a reaction to a situation that happened to your human form. That is not who you are. And I don't want you to feel, maybe you felt powerless during that moment, but I want you to know you are a powerful person. And that is not who your spirit, your soul, who you truly are. And that's a moment of a reaction to a situation. It's really helped my kids because they were starting to really define themselves during that moment of that's me, I'm evil, I'm bad. And so it's so important in those moments to help them feel safe and powerful again. Like this is a piece of you that you're learning and you'll learn how to adapt to these situations. This is part of your process. So
I think it's amazing that nowadays people talk about that and there is so much information and we're redefining that, because when I grew up a long time ago, these kids were sent out of the classroom because they were disturbing everybody, and they were being punished
Yeah.
for behaving bad. And this was a totally different dark time where people were not seen for their individual needs and what they can become as an individual. And back to your point about the parents discovering themselves, because we are all on a trajectory of evolution. And especially now, things have accelerated and everybody feels the acceleration of how fast it goes, right? And I think part of it is those kids are coming now because now is the time, the only time in human evolution that things are accelerating so fast, and those kids possess the computer, the brain power to accelerate fast. But it takes a lot of effort for the parents to keep up and accelerate their evolution as well. We're not perfect. We'll never be perfect, but we're doing our best to evolve. But as our kids grow, we are also evolving with them. We're learning. It's not that we have a manual to know how to do that perfectly. We are creating the manual as we go along. We're being challenged ourselves to find that middle way, to find the right path, to make it right. And sometimes we don't. Sometimes we don't find the right way or right away or in the right time. And then we put ourselves down and we accuse ourselves and we feel remorse and we're in grief, and we have to learn self-acceptance just as much as our kids need to learn self-acceptance. We are no different. We are still a kid that learns the same lessons as our kids. We just had more experience of time. And that matters because that experience is worth a lot. And that's why we do have the capacity to become a parent and guide someone else along the same path that, or a similar path that we were walking. But we're still walking the path ourselves. And that's a point we can't forget, that we need help, or we need a podcast like yourself to give us more bandwidth and understanding of where we are as parents and constantly shift ourselves. And back to astrology. Astrology, I see families come to me with their charts, right? 4 people or 5 people. And in astrology, you can see how people are collaborating from one chart to another. You can see collaboration, but you see where the friction points are. And those friction points, oh my goodness, they would come again and again and again until we're going to learn, each one of the people in the dynamic is going to learn what their part is, how can they own their part and not blame it on or mirror it into somebody else's. And it's so easy to say, yeah, but he triggered me. Of course, because you were triggered, because this is where you are powerless or less powerful and less aware. What is power? It's awareness, less aware of your reactions, and it's still triggering you. So if we know this in a family system, and we know who's triggering who and who should own their lesson and how to grow and evolve from your reaction point into a better action, proactive action, that would be a very helpful situation. So if people are, a lot of people go to counseling, but the counselor doesn't have the charts. So it takes a long time for the counselor to figure out the dynamics, right? You have to come a few times to figure out the dynamic, versus an astrologer that has the chart. You can see the dynamic, it's right there. Wow. And one thing about that I'd like to add is that we incarnate. I don't know if people believe in past life or not, but some people do, and I believe it. And so we incarnate within a soul family. And that soul family is comprised of souls that we know better than other souls. There are many souls. And that soul family would incarnate into many lifetimes, and it would change the roles. So at one point you'll be the mom of your kids, but maybe in other lifetimes they were your grandparents or aunts or even your parents. And the dynamics that we are feeling with our kids or other people in our family usually will continue from the last time we have spent together, something like that. It's not a direct line, but there will be a vibe of the last time, and there will be unconscious memories of behavior of that dynamic. And so we would come here, in a sense, to change that dynamic or work on what was not working. And of course, there would be an affinity. What was working would come again. So sometimes we like someone in our family more than we like other people in our even in the extended family. There is just a kinship, something that feels so right about this person. This is an affinity that you have with someone probably that you spend more time or that you worked on your heavy issues. But sometimes there is going to be a friction component to a certain dynamic that keeps coming again. And you can see it in the charts. And maybe by being aware of that, creating better strategies how to deal with that.
I love that so much. We definitely have that in our family. One piece when you were talking about with the soul families, when I met my husband, we met on the internet. And when we met in person, we were drawn to each other, like physically, our bodies were being pulled toward each other. And we both said when we met each other, it felt like we were home. So it was really beautiful. It was really unique. And one piece in
So
our
I
family.
bet you have your sun, your Mars, Venus are together, or Venus, or Moon, Venus, or the sun. You see it right away. You see how people, sometimes somebody approaches me and says, will I marry this guy? Should I marry this guy? Bring me a chart. And I look at the chart and I say, this is such a good match. So good. There will be those points of friction, but overall it looks good. I look and it's going to be really hard. Yeah, it's really hard.
It's
There is no,
interesting.
yeah. So,
I
yeah,
love that. And I love that you mentioned points of friction too, because although we're still learning together, and you have challenges in your life raising two gifted kids. It can be challenging at times, but yeah, it's learning together. And it's interesting when you talk about the chart of the whole family. My son and we have more friction. My husband and my daughter have more friction. And it's really interesting to see these pieces. So I love that you talk about a chart. I think that's so wonderful to think about. And along with those lines too, when you have that friction, you had mentioned beforehand to me about looking at communication pieces. That can be something that's really hard for me with my son and my husband with my daughter. Do you have pieces that you see sometimes come up with that?
Sure, sure. And by the way, just to touch a little bit more about the
Yeah.
friction, it's not a bad thing. For us, it's a bad thing because it brings unresolved emotions. But friction is a lesson. Friction is an opportunity to learn something new. The problem with us that we don't like friction is because it is challenging a set belief that we believe that this should be the outcome. And we don't want to move from that idea of what the outcome should be in our mind. If we just allow ourselves more flexibility and mobility into possibly a different outcome, maybe we will not minimize the friction, but learn how to deal with it in a better way. But back to communication. And of course, it ties into communication because everything is communication. Everything we do is communication, is based on communication. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to be connected to each other. So we communicate in many different ways. We communicate verbally. We communicate with our body. We're doing all kinds of movements that show that. But we also communicate telepathically or emotionally just by feelings. We're feeling each other. If you believe in all that spiritual stuff that we have the aura around us, and that aura is actually an electrical field, electromagnetical field that sends some signals. We are built like that. Our body has electrical current. And so we also communicate telepathically. And when your kids come home, you feel it. You feel if they had a good day. You feel if they didn't have a good day. They don't have to say much, right? They step in and you already know, your whole body is going backward. Oh my God, what's going on? Or yeah, you feel it. And how do we feel it? Because of that electrical magnetic field. Communication is the language or is the modality that we interact with each other. And we have in the chart a planet called Mercury, and Mercury is responsible for our communication. And if Mercury, for example, in some people's chart would be in an earth sign, like a Taurus or Capricorn or Virgo, these people, they need some very stable, calm, methodical, slow communication style. If you go too fast for them, They cannot digest it. They like a system communication style. They like things to be very clear. But if your Mercury is in Aries, you want everything to go fast, and fast is not fast enough. You want it yesterday. And so you cannot expect a person that owns an Earth Mercury to a person that owns a Mercury that is in fire or in air. These people, they need more information, more input, more acceleration. They thrive on it. And the other people, or maybe Mercury in water, these people are more imaginary types. They need more creativity. Maybe they're art people. So just knowing that component, just one planet in your chart would help you so much, because you'll understand what you need or what your kid needs in a way of communicating. And just by tweaking that strategy, you have a winner right there. And then, of course, there are other layers. Where is this Mercury sitting, in which house? So if that Mercury, because the houses would represent life departments. So for example, if that Mercury sits in the fourth house, which is home, it represents home, these people feel very good communicating at home with their immediate environment. But if it sits in the 10th house, these people want to be out there, or in the 11th house, these people need friends very much, versus the Mercury that sits in the fourth house. They need mom and dad. They need a very small nucleus of people that will keep them safe. But in the 11th house, they need a group, and within a group, they thrive. So just by knowing that, you've got some good points to work with. And I think it's a powerful tool to know those things about yourself and about others.
Beautiful. I love that so much. And I was raising red flags when I have two Aries in my family. So I definitely could see that. And they're the two that have the friction, my husband and my daughter. So it was interesting when you were talking about this. It was beautiful.
And Aries is, again, Aries has another component where if they don't get it fast, they get angry, they get frustrated. It's got to be their way right now. And so they don't have patience. That's the thing with an Aries. On the other hand, these are initiators. They're brave. They will take initiation and move on something that they want to do. They're not going to wait. They're leader. Their capacity for leadership is great. So, there is no good or bad. They're just different modalities and different parts to that modality that we can work with. But definitely Aries and Aries could bring friction. Yes.
I love that. Galit, I wanted to ask you, you had mentioned like the era with the Aquarius. I'm really curious as a parent, what does that look like, this phase? I always thought about horoscopes like daily horoscopes until I started tuning into your Instagram and I saw these phases and the new moons and the full moon. You had mentioned it. I think it's beautiful. This Aquarius phase, it sounds very interesting and positive. I love the pieces of that for humanity right now.
I'm glad that you think it's positive, because it can be bumpy as well.
Yes.
The thing is with that work. So in a nutshell, our solar system, the Milky Way, is revolving around our galaxy, and there is a big sun somewhere there, or a big black hole, whatever that is. And every 26,000 years, that's a big number.
Yes.
We do one revolution around that middle sun. And so every age, right now we're stepping into the Aquarian age, takes about 2,000 years. We're just moving away from the Piscean age into the Aquarius age. And the Piscean age was all about giving our power away to others, whether it is the priest, whether it is the rabbi, whether it is people that are intermediate between us and God. You are the little person, you do not have direct connection to God, and there should be a middleman. We also gave our power away to corporations and governments that will define who we are. And usually there was a structure at the top that would rule the many. That was the Piscean age, which had its good points and some dark points. The Aquarius age is all about collaboration. It's all about understanding that we are a variety of individuals that are completely different and bring a different facet of the expression of God or the universe, whatever that is. And each one of us can contribute to the greater good of all. And that is the beautiful premise of the Aquarian Age. Let's collaborate instead of separate. But and let's learn from the bees and the ants model that would put us all together and we're all going to work for the greater good of all. But the thing is, we're coming out of the Piscean Age, which was eventually led us to the highest value of greed and money. And that led to some people or some corporations or some countries becoming very controlling. And so in order to change that into the premise of let's collaborate for the greater good of all, it's going to take some bumpy road to shift and accept differences, variety, change of concept, and decentralizing of control rather than having control in one place held by the few, decentralizing control to be held by the many. It's not going to be pretty for a while, and we can see it all around us. And this is the change. Whenever two ages are merging, this is a long cycle. It's going to take a few years, not a day or two, for us to merge into that promise of the new age. The new age will also bring technology that hopefully will help us in ways of extending our longevity, lifespan, extending our ability to get out of this planet and colonize other planets, extending our capacity to think faster and better and create more inventions that will help us be more creative rather than spend our life in menial works. There's a lot of promises, of course, but with that positive aspects always comes some negativity. And the negative is, are we going to become infused with the machine and forget about our heart, about our emotions? Are we going to become a dystopia? There are all kinds of questions. We don't really know. But we know one thing for sure, that it's very bumpy at the moment on the planet. And part of that change and shift, change is uncomfortable for humans. We are security-based organisms. We don't like change. We only like change that we like. We don't like the change that we don't like. So how are we going to embrace that? So part of it is those humans that are coming with different traits to the planet, different sexuality, different brain capacity or abilities. And we're looking at that and we're asking ourselves, do we really like this? No, the good old days, some people say, no, the good old days in my time, it's always the old generation. In my time, we didn't have to deal with all that. Of course not, because it wasn't that time, but now is the time that we're dealing with change in every shape and form about our existence, about what human is and about what society is, not just us as individuals. And so it's going to continue to be bumpy. And the wars that we see, for example, is not just the wars outside on the global scene. It is also war inside of us, because until we come to terms and we want more peace, and some people are not in that awareness yet. So it's a matter of educating people, and perhaps in the new age slang, it's called raise your vibration, right? But what does it mean, raise your vibration? It means raise your awareness that if you choose the darkness or the wars or the friction, it's going to perpetuate that. And do we like that? No, it's very uncomfortable. It's very devastating. But if you choose to bring more harmony into your life, because the only thing we have control of, and even that sometimes is hard, is ourselves, right? So if we choose to bring more harmony into us as individuals and into our homes and into our neighborhood and into our community, maybe we can all ripple out more harmony in the world. So in a nutshell, that's what's going on. We are the people that chose, our souls have chosen to come here at this time. We have chosen to be here and drive and ride those challenging times and perhaps excel and perhaps change and shift what's not working into creating something that's working a little better for us. Awareness is the key. And back to astrology, seeing all that overview in astrology is like seeing the overview of the world, seeing the overview of us as a community, seeing the overview of you as a person, of a person, right? Helps us a lot because then we're not dealing only with the details, we understand the overall picture. And then from that understanding, we can derive more meaning into those details and strategies that work. And those that don't work, we can shift them, because those are how to, not what is the overview, but how to is those details. Does that make sense?
Yes, I love it so much. I've seen so many kids that are born nowadays and they have this passion inside of them for wanting to see the change, for wanting to improve humanity and see a new era. And my son and daughter both feel very passionate about many ethical dilemmas in the world right now. They become very passionate about it. My son was very passionate even when he was 3 about these changes when we would talk to him about things in the world and how things have evolved and where they're going. And so I love trying to embrace that in our children and help them to be the change makers and keep their vibration and their awareness open, like you had mentioned.
So talking about those kids, yeah, I'm sorry,
No worries.
talking about those kids that are coming now, those are pretty much advanced souls, because they chose to come into this bumpy ride at the moment, and they come here already with some program or understanding, higher understanding of evolution and where they want to take the world to. Most of those kids, if you let them be who they are and not program them with some old darkness structures, they will thrive and lead us to the next phase of evolution. They come with insights that we did not have, you did not have, I did not have, our parents didn't have, because we go forward with evolution, and every generation brings a gift of their ability and capability to become better or more advanced than the previous generation. So those kids, it's worth listening to them. They have a message. They have a way of looking at things that is perhaps a new doorway, a new path that allows us to think differently as a collective.
Yeah. If there was anything you wanted to tell parents raising these kids, what would you say? What have you seen?
I would say that on an individual basis, and raising kids that are sometimes challenging, is first of all recognizing what are the friction points, and then recognizing the strategies of minimizing the friction, and what are the supportive environments or modalities or strategies for your own kid, how to empower those or increase those supportive placements in your child's life. And it's a trial and error in the beginning, but then you can identify them and know and work on the communication, because the communication is one of the greatest challenges. And if you know your child's preference of communication style and preference, and that's a big one for parents and for the child themselves. Because when they get into a situation when they know they're going to fail, if someone is afraid of public speaking and the teacher requires them to go and to get up and do public speaking, it's not going to go. It's going to create a meltdown. That's not a good thing. So just recognizing those traits that are yes and those traits that are no, and embrace those, even the no ones. It's good to know, right? And avoid those. Make it as easy as possible. And of course, it's such a journey. It's not that they're born and you know that. It's a journey. Maybe it is worth consulting with astrologer, with astrology, and knowing your kid's style and where are the gifts and where are the challenges, and just being more aware of that and implementing more empowerment. Yeah.
I love that so much. I love bringing the idea of different tools and ideas to parents. And astrology is definitely a modality that we can use as a tool to understand our children's strengths and challenges and how we can better support them and how we can support our family. So I love that.
You know what? I bet that a lot of those kids, they're so brilliant. I bet they would love astrology. I bet if they are exposed to astrology as a self-awareness tool, they would start seeing themselves and become more aware of themselves, because they would see the layers. Astrology is, if you go deep into astrology, there is a lot of modalities of psychology, a lot of modalities of spirituality, but definitely it's a self-awareness tool. And if the more one knows themselves, the better they're equipped for this ride through this, especially through now this bumpy ride in the world. So maybe that's a thought.
That's another wonderful thought. I love that. I think my kids would definitely be very interested. Even at 9 years old, I think my son would really enjoy it, and my daughter one day as well. Thank you so much for being here, Galit. I had a little bit of a starstruck era because my mom and I, we love following your Instagram, Astrology Dome. It's been amazing. And I share it with all of my friends. I send it to all my cousins and everybody. I'm like, you have to listen. This is wonderful. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you for approaching me. I really appreciate that. And good luck with everybody. This is a beautiful journey. Let's enjoy it, right? Let's excel and expand all together. Thank you.
Well, that's a wrap. Thanks so much for tuning in, Changemakers. This is Carrie. And if you haven't done a review for us, 5 stars and a little few words about what you've enjoyed in our podcast episodes, we would really appreciate it. If you guys would like to ever message me, I would love any questions you have or any feedback at info@hearttoheartlife.com. We also have a brand new website, which we're super excited to share. It's hearttoheartlife.com. Thanks so much for tuning in, and happy life, happy times, Changemaker families. Please remember that the information shared on this podcast is educational in nature and does not constitute licensed mental health advice. If you need such advice, you should speak with a licensed professional about your unique situation. Thanks so much, happy listeners.